Good afternoon, everyone. We continue the discourse, and in chapter 9 of Job, we begin to see two chapters of Job's response to what uh, the friend yesterday, Bildad, had been more direct to suggest that uh, Job really would have sinned like his sons. And so, with that kind of a conclusion, I just bring your attention to the end of chapter 8. Now, the end of chapter 8, especially in verse 20, we read that God will not cast away the blameless, and that would be Job. Job is blameless, like how we have read in Job chapter 1, verse 1. Nor will he uphold the evil doers. And in so doing, that would be the principle. God will always protect the good and the blameless, and will punish the evil, the bad. That is to suggest that perhaps Job is the bad, and that's why he is suffering. And so once again, we find Job responding. And so this word responded really is to say to speak up, to speak up. And basically it will be loudly. This is really a when you say respond, it's like responding to the friend, but it's more like contending, would be a much better word. Contending. He is making his defense. So he says, in truth, I know this is so. Indeed, I know that it is so. The idea this is so is that God will protect the blameless and not support the evildoer. This is in chapter 8, verse 20. Now, that's the crux of the matter. And he agrees, yes, God will punish the wicked. No question about it. And then it says, how can a person be right with God? Now, this idea, be right with God, essentially says, how can a person contend with God? Make things right with God, right? Make right. And this is in the form of, how would you say, uh, to find justice with God. Particularly in his case, how can he ever defend himself before God? Now, from verse 3 onwards, we will begin to understand Job's knowledge of God, Job's understanding of God. And Job is now saying all these things are happening even to the blameless, which he himself is experiencing. It doesn't make any sense. There is no logic for a blameless person to be suffering, but he is suffering. He does not disagree with the fact that God will punish the wicked. But in Job's mind is that the wicked gets punished and it afflicts the blameless as well. Now, in modern day, we call this collateral damage, meaning when somebody destroys a place, the good and evil people will equally suffer in that calamity. And that's how Job is beginning to see things, because he just cannot explain why he himself is suffering like an evil person when he is not evil. So in verse 3, as we begin to understand, Job is saying this: there is no way anyone can contend with God. The word be in the right with God is to seek justice with God, in a way to ask, why am I suffering? If one wish to contend with him, God doesn't need to understand, no, doesn't need to answer him, even once in 1,000 times. The idea here is, who is man? Job has this idea that man is not an equal with God. And when man is not an equal with God, how can man contend with God? This word is contend. How can man argue with God? How can man be right with God or find justice with God? God doesn't need to pay attention to man. And that is Job's idea, that God will not pay attention to individuals in that sense. He says he is wise in heart, mighty in strength. Who has defied him without harm? Who has hardened his heart? Now, this word defied is hardening the heart. Harden himself. And it says without harm, uh, literally means to be complete. So, and be complete. Who has strengthened his heart, hardened his heart, and be complete? You can't be. If you fight against God, then you will suffer because God will punish. That is a consistent view, that God will protect the blameless and will not support the evildoers, and God will inflict harm upon the judgment of the wicked. But Job, always remember, Job's contention is that he is blameless. He is innocent, yet he is suffering like one of the wicked. And so he is saying it is futile to argue with God. In verse 5, he describes the character of God. He says, it is God who moves the mountains, and they do not know how. When he overturns them in anger. So all of this would be a picture, the imagery of the creation, and perhaps of the destruction, which is the global flood. The idea here is to demonstrate Job's understanding that God is all powerful. He can move mountains, and we don't know how that works. He can turn them upside down, like in the destruction of the global flood. It is he who shakes the earth from its place, and its pillars tremble. So the land has pillars underneath, and the earth, the land moves. And so this would be very much a picture of the global disaster. It says, he commands the sun not to shine, and he put a seal on the stars. What does that mean? All of these can be darkened. So he sees God as this all powerful creator, and he has powers over the heavens. He alone stretches out the heavens as in the creation and tramples down the waves. This would be the crest of the sea. So it gives us this picture that in the creation, water was over the the entire land. So water covers the land, and the Spirit of God was hovering in dark clouds. over the surface of the waters. So it is important for us to note that this is like a picture that says God is actually walking on water, if you want to call it that way. Uh, this would be treading, not trampled, treading. And it is only on the surface of the water. This would be in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. And so this is the picture of the Spirit of God, the presence of God. God Himself is on the surface of the water, as if He's walking on water. This is the picture. And one surprise that most people would have is that the book of Job describes constellations. Who makes the bear? This is the Arcturus. The bear, these are constellations. Orion is a constellation. This is a major constellation, which is the Orion, the how would you say that would be the one of the biggest constellations up there. The Pleiades would be the seven sisters. They are seven stars. And then the constellations of the south, this would be the southern hemisphere. Basically, Job is saying all these constellations up there in the sky, who put them there? And the answer is God. It is He who does great things, the unfathomable. This would be without limits. You don't know the extent of how God has done things. That would be, how would you say, the something that you cannot understand, cannot fathom, right? Unfathomable. And it says that there is wondrous works, the miraculous works without number. These are all with regards to the creation. How did all these happen? It is beyond understanding, beyond speech. And then he says this in a more personal way. If God were to pass by me, I would not see. And he passes, I will not perceive him. This is an A and a B, right? An A and a B. That even if God were to come by, you won't be able to see him because nobody would be able to. That's how Job perceives God. If he were to snatch something away or he strikes, right? He strikes. Who can restrain him? This idea is hold back. You cannot hold back God's hand. Who could say to him, what are you doing? So you can see one of the very important ideas is Job sees himself as mere man, cannot be compared to God. It must be very clear as the verses are being expressing itself. It's how Job sees God. Verse 13, God will not turn back his anger or hold back. This would be hold back. All the helpers, all the helpers of Rahav cower. Now, this word uh, cower would be to bow down, right? To bow down, or how should we say to crouch. The idea is being humbled. right? The idea is being humble. Everyone is beneath God. When God shows his anger, nobody can stand, right? Nobody can stand. In the Jewish understanding, the idea of Rahav uh, is illustration, is a metaphor of Egypt. Basically saying that when God showed his anger to Egypt, nobody can hold him back. And so Job asked this, how then can I answer him? And then I must choose my words with him. Now, this is not before, this would be with him. This this whole picture here is not in a question mark. It should be in a more direct statement. It says that uh, surely I can answer him and choose my words with him. And so basically, he's saying that I am blameless. I can face God. That's what he says. For though I were right, I will not reply. Will I have to implore my mercy of my judge? And so he's saying, yes, I can face, but I will choose not to speak because of who God is. If I called and he answers me, could not believe that he was listening to my voice. So this is commensurating, right? Commensurating with how Job sees that Job thinks that God does not entertain individuals. And so he sees himself as one individual. Why would God come and pay attention to him? So he doesn't understand why he is suffering, but he is suffering. And the wicked are also suffering. And so he thinks that he is a collateral damage in the entire picture, and he has no place to question God. In verse 17, he would crush me. Bruise me is to crush me with a storm, a tempest, a great wind, and multiply my wounds for not for no cause. I think you can say that way. Uh, and the idea here is for nothing, right? Without cause means for nothing. Meaning, even if God were to do this to me, and and for no reason that God wants to do this to me, uh, I have nothing to say. He will not allow me to get my breath or catch my breath, and because he saturates me with bitterness. Right now, he just wants me to feel really bad. And so he's saying, if God were to do that to him, he has nothing to say. Right? He has nothing to say. If it is, well, this what says it's a matter of uh, power. Basically, it is saying in verse 19, he says, if it's a trial of strength, right? It's a trial of strength. Behold, he is the strong one. He is the mighty one. Not a matter, if it is a trial. And if it's a judgment, then who will summon? Now, this word here is not summon him. Unfortunately, it summoned me. There's some challenges with the translation. The idea here is whatever may happen, who's going to tell me about it? Nobody is saying anything. Nobody is saying anything. And his friends are saying, but you must have sinned. And so verse 20, Job says, though I am righteous. Now, this word is not righteous. This word is tam, and tam means though I am complete, that I am innocent. That is what it means, not righteous. Though I am innocent, if I open my mouth, it would condemn me. And so if I am blameless, he will declare me guilty. Whatever may be, whatever I think, right? It says here, what I think does not matter. That's how he sees God, right? What I think does not matter. What God thinks matters. If he wants to do that, then who am I to say otherwise? In verse 21, I am guiltless, blameless. But I do not know how to find rest. I do not take notice of myself means I I do not know where my soul is at rest. I do not know how to find rest would be a better way. I do not know rest. And then this word here, I reject my life. This one literally means I despise my life. As you remember in Job chapter 3, he cursed the day he was born because you need to understand and appreciate the suffering that he is going through. That it is incredible, he is in pain, and he is not wanting to blame God for anything. Verse 22. It is all one, therefore I say, he destroys the guiltless, which is the innocent, and the wicked. Now we go back to where we left off with Job. Job is saying that God destroys the wicked, which everyone agrees. Bildad also agrees. But Job goes one step further. But I am not wicked. I am innocent. And it seems that God also destroys the innocent with the wicked together. And we call this collateral damage. And Job is saying, at this time, all I can see is yes, God will destroy the wicked, but I am being destroyed along the way. Verse 23. If the whip or the scourge kills suddenly, he will mock at the calamity of the innocent. This is the same as this. Then it says, the earth has been handed over to the wicked. He covers the face of its judges. If it's not he, then who is it? And so he is now saying this. All of this must be this explanation. God is not concerned with him. as an individual. And it seems that God really doesn't care. That's the picture that Job is saying. Yes, he will destroy the wicked, but the innocent gets caught in the fire. I am one of those innocent. If this is the case where God has handed over to the wicked, and possibly, if you talk about it, this would be Hasatan to do all these things, then there is no judgment of righteousness because God doesn't care that I'm blameless. Is it? Is that the case? This can't be God who is doing it. That's the picture that he has in his mind. Now he paints a picture of himself. Right? He says, "Now my days are swifter than a runner." He says the destruction of my life and the way I'm suffering is I'm seeing the destruction of my life faster than anything else. My days are fleeing away. They see no good. In fact, he sees evil, pain, suffering. That's what he sees. His good days are slipping by like reed boats. This would be the ships. Uh, I guess here you could say the ships of Ave. This is the word ships of Ave, which is a name of a place. And like an eagle that swoops on its prey, my days are slipping away. It looks like I wish I'm going to die and let it be soon. Though I say, and if I say, I will forget my complaint, and this would be complaint to God about his condition. I will put my face in order and be cheerful. Now, this idea, I will leave my face in order and be cheerful, means that he is going to abandon his anger and he's going to keep quiet. So he's just going to change his face to be like this, pretend nothing happened and swallow in the pain. And then he says, I am afraid of all my pains. I know that you will not acquit me. He says, I will look at everything I am suffering and you will not acquit me. Now, verse 28 says, acquit in I guess you could say this, not declare innocent. So he's seeing God not going to do anything about his condition. And no matter what he thinks of himself as being innocent, it looks like God doesn't really care. And he is not going to call me innocent. Now, in verse 29 says this, uh, if I am, so the question should start in front. If I am guilty, then why do I struggle in vain? Means this, if I'm guilty, I should have accepted my punishment in my suffering because God is just and he does not support the wicked, and I should just keep quiet. But I am not. He says, I wash myself with snow and cleanse my hands with lye. Right? This would be soap. And then he says, you will plunge me into the pit, and my own garments would loathe me. So no matter how I claim to be clean in this way, that I am not clean. Even if I thought I was clean and I did all these things, it seems that I'm going deeper and deeper into the hole. Job is seeing that he will continue to suffer because God would not care about this one individual. Verse 32. Verse 32 is quite interesting. It says, for he is not a man as I am. It means this: God is not a man. Now, this is an important concept. God is not a man like I am a man. And it says here that I may answer him, that we may go to court together, or we would contend together. He is saying a very important concept that we all probably would need to pay attention. God is not a man. I am a man. We are not equals. So we cannot go to court. We cannot, no one can actually represent me to fight this case because God is not the equal that I can actually do anything with. That is how God is in Job's mind. For all that he is suffering, he has an extremely high regard of God. In our last three verses, it says this: there is no arbiter between us, between Job and God. So, no arbiter. Why? Because not equal. How are you going to have any discussion? Who can place his hand upon both of us? There is no one greater than God. So there is no one who can be an arbitrator between the two. Let him remove his rod from me, and let not the dread of him terrify me. I will speak and not fear him, but I am not like that in myself. Now, let me just quickly end this. He says that no matter what, number one, I will speak because I am innocent. If it is in a human trial, right? If I am in a human trial, but I am not in a human trial. So I have nothing that I can say. Not in a trial. Because God and me cannot have any arbiters. We are not equals. God is far greater than me. And hence, at the end of the day, this is Job's knowledge of God in chapter 9. And it carries on into chapter 10. And I encourage all of us to go back and understand that even in the immense pain and suffering of Job, his mind is saying, I am innocent, but I am suffering like someone who is an evildoer. God punishes the evildoer. I must have gotten punished along the way. Not because God wants to punish me, but I happen to be there. Certainly, this world has been given over to Hasatan, the evil one, who will commence all these punishments on behalf of God. So God himself would not be involved. That is his mind. He says, I can't contend. I can't fight God. I can't appeal because God is God and I am man. And so I might as well keep quiet, swallow it, and wait to die. That would be where we are at the end of chapter 9. But when we get into chapter 10, there is much more that Job would reveal in his mind about God. And with this, we come to the end of our session today in chapter 9.